The forest doesn't sleep, it waits. Shadows stretch where no light should reach, and something unseen moves just beyond your vision. Every step you take, every breath you draw, could be the one that draws its attention. Tonight, you'll follow men who vanished beneath trees that groan with secrets, who found fire where no one burned, and who stumbled into cabins meant to trap the living. The air tastes of smoke and silence, and the world feels hollow, like something is listening, patient, eternal, and hungry. This is a confession I have carried like a hidden curse, like something whispered by a djinn beneath a moonless sky. I was 25, maybe 26, before marriage, before children, before responsibility wrapped itself around my bones like protective armor. Back then, I walked willingly into isolation the way some men walk into prayer. Solo backpacking trips through the Appalachian wilderness were my ritual, my private pilgrimage into silence. I would drive to forgotten trailheads where the asphalt dissolved into dust, then hike deep into the backcountry, far beyond marked trails, far beyond cell service, far beyond the reach of witnesses. Days without seeing another soul, just trees, wind, and the quiet murmur of something ancient moving between them. My friends said I was reckless. Maybe I was. That particular journey led me into Cherokee National Forest, a stretch of wilderness old enough to feel sentient. I had already been out there 2 days. The weather had been merciful, the forest calm, not a single human presence since the first morning, until the sky shifted. Late afternoon on the second day, I noticed storm clouds gathering to the west, thick, swollen masses like dark gin rising from the horizon. At first, I dismissed them. I had walked through rain countless times. Rain was manageable. This was not rain. Within an hour, the wind sharpened into something violent. The temperature dropped abruptly, as though the forest itself had inhaled. I stopped to pull on another layer. The trees began to sway unnaturally, their branches bending like supplicants forced into ruku beneath an unseen tyrant. Then the downpour came, not a gentle rain, but a sudden punishing deluge. Wind howled through the canopy like an ifrit unleashed. Branches cracked above me. Lightning tore across the sky with blinding ferocity, striking disturbingly close. I was hiking at elevation with a metal-framed pack on my back, an offering to the storm. I began scanning desperately for shelter. The section of trail I was on offered no protection, fully exposed, soaked to the bone. Thunder rattled the earth. I remember thinking for the first time that I might not make it through this storm. And then I saw it. Through the trees to my left, partially swallowed by forest shadow, stood a structure, small, angular, human-made. I felt relief so intense it was almost religious. I stumbled toward it, nearly sprinting the last stretch. It was a tiny, one-story cabin, old beyond measure. The wood darkened with age, the roof bowed slightly, as if tired of standing. It looked like a relic from another century, a hunter's shelter or forgotten homesteader's refuge. I didn't hesitate. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air within was dry but stale, heavy with a sour odor I couldn't immediately place. Dim light filtered through a single window. Inside, a lone chair, a small wooden table, a bare cot frame against the far wall, a stone fireplace clogged with ancient ash. Nothing welcoming, but it was shelter. I stripped off my soaked outer layers and collapsed on the wooden floor. No exploration, no curiosity,
just survival. Outside, the storm roared like something summoned from the desert wastelands of forgotten Arabia, a shaitan hammering at the walls. For 10 or 15 minutes, I lay there listening to the violence outside. Then curiosity returned. I turned on my flashlight and began to look around more carefully. That was when I realized the cabin was not as abandoned as it first appeared. Near the cot lay a sleeping bag, rolled tightly. It wasn't ancient, not nearly as decayed as everything else. On the table sat a couple of cans and water jugs. Someone had been here, recently. At first, I told myself it wasn't unusual. Remote cabins often became temporary base camps for hunters or hikers. But as my beam moved across the walls near the door, something caught my eye. Marks. At first glance, I assumed they were weather damage, age, rot. I stepped closer. They were scratches, dozens of them, some shallow, others carved deep into the wood. No pattern, no tally marks, just frantic, desperate gouges. My stomach tightened. I stepped back and examined the door. The latch was simple, functional, but when I opened it slightly and looked at the frame, I noticed something else, a metal bracket mounted outside, clearly designed to hold a padlock. Outside, there was no internal locking mechanism, which meant the door could only be locked from outside. A slow, sick realization began creeping up my spine. I shut the door and turned toward the window. The glass was intact, surprisingly so. That puzzled me until I saw the screws drilled into each corner of the frame, driven from the exterior. The window had been secured shut from outside, and around the interior frame, more scratches. These deeper, angrier, wood splintered as if someone had clawed at it with bare hands in blind desperation. It struck me all at once. This wasn't protection from something outside. This was containment. Someone had been kept here, trapped. The air inside suddenly felt thinner, charged with a presence that did not belong to me, as though whatever anguish had occurred within these walls had not fully departed, as though the cabin still remembered. Outside, thunder roared again, and I stood there, soaked, alone, in a cabin that felt less like shelter and more like a cage prepared for sacrifice.
I should have left. Every rational instinct in me whispered the same warning. Exit now. But the storm outside raged with such ferocity that stepping back into it felt like walking into the open jaws of a shaitan. Lightning fractured the sky. Rain struck the metal roof like 1,000 fists. The forest beyond the door had dissolved into chaos. So I stayed. I convinced myself the scratches were old. The bracket outside the door? Probably just precaution. The sealed window? Maybe protection from animals. The sleeping bag, though newer than the rest, was rigid and layered with dust. Whatever had happened here, if anything had, was long finished. Or so I told myself. Time blurred. An hour, perhaps, more. The storm did not weaken. If anything, it deepened, like a ritual intensifying beneath a blackened sky. The rain became so loud against the roof that it erased smaller sounds entirely, which is why it took me longer than it should have to notice the first anomaly. A faint scraping, somewhere along the left wall of the cabin. At first, I dismissed it as a branch caught in the wind, but I couldn't recall seeing any branches low enough to brush against the structure. The cabin had stood slightly isolated, its immediate perimeter relatively clear. The scraping came again, longer this time. Then, 2 heavy thumps against the porch. Not the random percussion of storm debris, not the chaotic scatter of wind-blown branches.
These were deliberate, weighted. My body froze. I stood in the center of the cabin, staring at a knot in the wooden wall, as if focusing on it would sharpen my hearing. I strained against the roar of rain, trying to isolate movement beyond it. Nothing, or perhaps too much of nothing. A slow paranoia crept in, coiling around my thoughts like an unseen ifrit circling prey. How many other sounds had been swallowed by the storm? How long had something been out there? My eyes drifted toward the window. I could not bring myself to approach it, because if something truly stood outside, it would already be looking in. I remained frozen for what felt like an eternity, my breathing shallow, my heart pounding in my ears louder than the rain. Eventually, the silence between noises stretched long enough for doubt to seep back in. Maybe it was an animal, a deer, a raccoon, even a bear investigating the scent of human presence. I forced myself to inhale slowly. "You're spiraling," I thought. "The storm is playing tricks on you." I had almost convinced myself. Then I heard it. A low, heavy pressure against the door. Not knocking, not scratching. Pressure, like someone leaning their entire weight against it from the outside. The wood groaned. The latch rattled once sharply. Then the pressure released. My pulse exploded in my chest, and suddenly something clicked into place with horrifying clarity. If someone was out there, why not just come in? The door wasn't locked. There was no barrier, unless they didn't want to enter, unless they wanted me inside. The memory of the bracket outside the door returned, the sealed window, the claw marks gouged into wood from the interior, the suffocating stench in the air. This cabin wasn't refuge, it was containment, and perhaps whoever was outside understood that better than I did. A nauseating thought formed, cold and deliberate. What if the purpose wasn't to break in? What if the purpose was to ensure I didn't leave? My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe exhaustion and fear were conjuring devils where none existed. But instinct, the same instinct that keeps men alive in wilderness, was screaming now. Leave, storm or no storm. I moved quickly, shoving my damp clothes and gear back into my backpack. My hands trembled. Every shadow in the cabin felt alive. Every creak of wood sounded like a footstep drawing nearer. I had maybe 30 seconds left before I would bolt through the door. That was when the world shattered. Glass exploded behind me, a violent crash, sharp and final. I spun around just in time to see something come through the window, an object trailing something dark and wet. And then, fire. The entire room ignited in a breath. Flames erupted unnaturally fast, spreading across the walls as though the wood had been anointed in accelerant long before I ever arrived. Heat slammed into me like a physical force. Smoke thickened instantly, black and choking. It was no accident, no lightning strike. This was deliberate. The door. I lunged for it and pulled. It would not move. It had been secured from the outside. The latch rattled uselessly in my hand. Panic transformed into raw survival. I slammed my shoulder against the wood once, twice, a third time with everything I had left. The hinges gave, the door collapsed outward, and I fell with it into the storm. Rain drenched me instantly, steam rising from my skin as fire roared behind me. The cabin, now a blazing inferno, cast flickering orange light into the woods, like some ancient sacrificial pyre offered to unseen forces. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I couldn't see clearly. Smoke burned my lungs. Rain blinded me. Branches whipped against my face as I sprinted blindly into the forest. I had maybe 30 yards between myself and the flames when something tackled me from behind. Hard. I hit the ground violently. The breath punched from my chest. A body landed on top of me, human weight, solid, violent. Hands clawed at my face, a voice screaming uncomfortably, rage and something else mixed within it. We rolled in mud and rain. He tried to get his forearm around my throat. I gouged at his eyes. He pulled my hair, slammed my head against the earth. I felt my vision dimming, my lungs burning. This wasn't random. This was execution. I don't know where the strength came from, but I managed to twist, to shove him off balance. For a split second, his grip loosened. I pushed him away and scrambled to my feet, and I ran again. Behind me, the man screamed, a sound so unhinged it didn't feel human. It echoed through the storm like a curse being cast into the night. I dared to glance back once. The cabin was fully engulfed, an inferno consuming everything, a blazing monument to something planned long before I ever arrived. The second time I looked back, the glow was smaller through the trees, but the darkness between the trees felt occupied, and I did not know if I was being pursued or herded.
I did not stop running. Branches tore at my clothes, mud swallowed my boots. The storm howled behind me like a legion of unseen jinn, celebrating a sacrifice that had narrowly failed. I could not tell whether the man was still chasing me, or whether he had simply released me into the forest like prey flushed from a trap. My lungs burned from smoke. Every breath tasted like ash and iron. I ran until my legs gave out. It happened without warning. 1 second I was stumbling forward through blackness and rain. The next I collapsed, sliding down a slope slick with mud and leaves. My body felt distant, numb. Fire, rain, impact, terror. It had all fused into something unreal. I crawled. Ahead of me, 2 massive trees had fallen against each other, forming a narrow triangular void beneath them. A dark pocket, just large enough to wedge myself inside. I didn't think, I just dragged myself into that hollow space and curled into a crouch. The storm raged above, but the trees blocked most of the rain. For the first time since the cabin ignited, I was still, and that silence felt worse than the chaos. My forearm throbbed violently, my neck burned. I didn't need to look to know I had been scorched. My clothes were soaked, half charred. My skin felt blistered in places, but pain seemed distant, muted by shock. Time fractured. Minutes stretched like hours. Hours collapsed into seconds. I don't know how long I stayed wedged beneath those trees. I only remember the rhythm of my breathing, slow, deliberate, forcing myself not to hyperventilate. Every snap of a twig beyond my hiding place felt deliberate. Every shift of wind sounded like footsteps approaching. I imagined him moving through the forest, searching, patient, methodical, perhaps whispering verses of some dark invocation beneath his breath, perhaps smiling. Or perhaps something else was moving out there, something older, something drawn by fire and fear. The thought crept into my mind uninvited. What if the man wasn't alone? What if the cabin wasn't merely a trap for wanderers, but part of something ritualistic? I forced that idea away. Panic would get me killed. Eventually, sensation returned to my limbs, pins and needles stabbing at my hands. My body shivered uncontrollably. I realized then that staying still meant freezing, or worse, being found. Move or die, that simple. I slid out from beneath the trees and stood on trembling legs. The storm had weakened slightly, though rain still fell in relentless sheets. The fire's glow was no longer visible through the woods, which meant either I had put enough distance between myself and it, or it had burned out.
I didn't know which possibility unsettled me more. I began walking. No trail, no compass reading, just movement away from the cabin's direction. Every step felt unstable. My muscles screamed in protest. I tasted blood at the back of my throat. At some point, the forest shifted subtly, the ground leveling, the trees spacing differently. And then, like a cruel miracle, I stumbled onto a trail. I didn't recognize it, but it didn't matter. I followed it blindly. The rain eventually tapered to a drizzle. Dawn began to bleed into the horizon, pale gray light seeping through the canopy. My legs moved mechanically. I must have looked feral, burned, mud-covered, half-conscious. I remember reaching a trailhead. I remember collapsing near a parked vehicle that wasn't mine. And I remember a stranger's face leaning over me, eyes wide with alarm. After that, fragments, the inside of a car, the smell of antiseptic, bright hospital lights, the sensation of hands examining blistered skin. Doctors told me I had second-degree burns along my left forearm and the back of my neck. They said I was lucky. If I had inhaled much more smoke, the outcome would have been different. Permanent damage was avoided, pain not. The burns took weeks to heal. The nightmares have not. When I finally returned home, safe and whole on the outside, I made a quiet vow. No more solo trips. No more wandering beyond marked trails. No more chasing solitude into places that felt inhabited by something unseen. I gave the police everything I could, location estimates, descriptions, timelines, but I could see it in their eyes. Remote wilderness, no clear coordinates, no identifiable suspect. A burned-down cabin in the middle of nowhere would vanish into ash and rainfall within days. Case closed before it ever opened. The only question that still gnaws at me is timing. Why that night? Why that storm? The cabin had been prepared, the wood treated, the window secured, the bracket installed, the scratches carved by someone who once realized too late that they were not sheltered, but imprisoned. Had the man been waiting for anyone, or had he been waiting specifically for someone foolish enough to enter during a storm? My wife believes I stopped solo hiking because I matured, because I became responsible, and she isn't wrong, but I have never told her about the cabin, about the fire, about the hands around my throat in the rain, because there is one thought I cannot shake. If the door had not given way, if I had hesitated even a few seconds longer, I would have burned inside that cage. And perhaps that was always the plan.
Recovery is a strange thing. The body heals in layers. Blisters dry, skin peels, new flesh forms where fire once kissed bone. Doctors told me I was fortunate. The burns were second degree. Painful, yes, but temporary. No permanent scarring beyond faint discoloration along my forearm and the back of my neck. They did not examine the parts of me that had truly been burned. At night, I would wake gasping, smelling smoke that wasn't there, hearing rain striking a metal roof that did not exist. In those half-conscious moments, I would swear I felt the cabin walls tightening around me, the way a tomb seals itself. I reported everything to the authorities. I gave them the estimated trail access point, described the storm, the cabin, the bracket on the outside of the door, the screws in the window frame. I told them about the scratches carved in the interior walls, the frantic gouges that could not have been accidents. They listened. They nodded. But wilderness swallows evidence. In forests as vast and untamed as Cherokee National Forest, structures disappear, trails shift,
fires erase what little remains. Without precise coordinates, without witnesses, without a body, it becomes a story. And stories are easy to dismiss. I never returned to look for the remains. Part of me considered it briefly, some stubborn, prideful instinct wanting proof. But another part of me understood something darker. Whatever had happened there had not been random. That cabin had been prepared. The wood had ignited too quickly. Even in a thunderstorm, even beneath relentless rain, it burned like something consecrated in accelerant. No lightning strike could explain that. No accident. It had been staged. The sleeping bag, the canned goods, the illusion of temporary habitation, all of it carefully curated, a lure disguised as refuge. And the bracket outside the door. I think about that detail more than anything. A door designed to lock from the outside only. A window screwed shut from beyond reach. Scratches carved from within. It was not a hunting cabin. It was a chamber, a containment vessel. In Arabic folklore, there are stories of Bait el-Habs, houses of confinement, where men were offered to unseen entities, trapped until whatever watched from the darkness decided their fate. I am not claiming that is what happened to me, but sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, I remember the way the storm intensified as I approached that structure, the way the sounds outside never resolved into footsteps, the way the pressure against the door felt measured, deliberate. What unsettles me most is this. If the man intended to kill me by fire, why tackle me after I escaped? Why not let the flames finish what they started? Unless the fire had been meant to keep me inside. Unless my breaking through the door disrupted something. Unless I was not supposed to leave that cabin alive. That thought lingers like a curse. My wife believes I stopped solo backpacking because I grew up, because risk no longer appealed to me the way it once did. And she is partially right, but maturity had nothing to do with it. Fear did. Not the fear of dying, the fear of being deliberately selected. The fear that somewhere, someone waits for storms, watches remote trails, studies human patterns, prepares cages disguised as shelter. I never told her the truth. I never told anyone the full truth, except in fragmented whispers to myself when memory presses too hard against the edges of sleep. Because saying it aloud makes it real. And if it is real, then somewhere, perhaps even now, another storm gathers. And somewhere within it, another wanderer might see a cabin through the trees and feel that same desperate relief, unaware that relief can be a veil, unaware that doors open easily because they are meant to close behind you.
Years have passed. I have built a life that feels solid. Marriage, responsibility, routine. The kind of life where storms are watched safely from behind glass windows, not walked into. The kind of life where children sleep down the hall, unaware that their father once nearly became ash in a forgotten forest. Outwardly, I moved on. Inwardly, the cabin never burned down. It still stands somewhere in my mind, intact, waiting. There is one detail I rarely allow myself to examine for too long: the timing. The storm did not feel natural. It escalated too fast, dark clouds swelling as if summoned, wind rising with unnatural urgency.
lightning striking near enough to drive me toward shelter. Every step of that sequence pushed me toward that cabin like a shepherd guiding livestock. And then the fire. Wood soaked by rain should not erupt like that. Not in seconds, not in a deluge. It spread with frightening speed, too clean, too efficient, as though the structure had been prepared long ago, treated with something flammable and patient, something waiting. The man who attacked me, if he was only a man, moved with singular intent. He did not shout threats. He did not demand anything. He did not rob me. He tried to silence me, to choke the air from my lungs in the mud and rain. And when I escaped his grip, he screamed, not in frustration, but in something closer to rage or loss, as if something had slipped through his hands that was not meant to. There are moments, especially during thunderstorms, when memory sharpens into something almost physical. The smell of ozone in the air, the distant rumble of thunder, the way wind presses against the house like an unseen presence testing its strength. In those moments, I remember the scratches, the deep gouges carved at the cabin walls by someone who realized too late what that place truly was. I sometimes imagine that person, trapped while rain hammered the roof, clawing at wood until their nails tore, screaming into a storm that swallowed their voice. Were they burned, or did something else claim them first? There is an old Arabic phrase, La makan yakhlu min al-ayn. No place is free from the eye that watches. I used to think solitude meant safety, that being alone in vast wilderness was freedom. Now I understand something different. Isolation does not mean absence of witnesses. It only means you do not see who is watching. I never returned to solo trekking, not because I fear wild animals, not because I fear storms, but because I learned that sometimes shelter is a snare, sometimes fire is a ritual, sometimes a man is only the visible part of something much older, something patient, something that waits for thunder to mask its footsteps. I survived that night, but survival is not the same as escape. Every time lightning fractures the sky, I wonder if somewhere in a remote stretch of forest, another storm is gathering over another forgotten structure. A cabin with a bracket mounted on the outside of its door, a window screwed shut from beyond reach, and I wonder if when the next wanderer stumbles toward it in desperation, they will feel that same overwhelming relief before the door closes, before the fire begins, before the forest devours their screams.
The next part of this story will send shivers down your spine. Tell me, where are you listening from? How terrified are you? Comment below. If you're new, subscribe now. I've told a lot of horror stories on air. Listeners always say, "Man, the way you tell it makes it feel real." But this story, I've never told this one live. It happened about 3 years ago. I was working the night shift at a popular radio station back then. My show ran from midnight to 3 a.m., the hours when the city slowly goes quiet and people are alone with their thoughts. The show was called Midnight Whispers. The station was located in the older part of the city. Narrow streets, dim streetlights, stray dogs barking in the distance. From the outside, the building looked like any ordinary office space. But after midnight, the inside felt different. too quiet. That night started off normal. I was in the studio, taking live calls from listeners, sharing their creepy experiences. A light rain was falling outside. I could hear droplets tapping softly against the studio window. 1:17 a.m. I remember the time clearly. The digital clock on the studio wall glowed red. A call came in. Name unknown. Number private. I answered it. "Hey, you're live on the air. What's your name?" Silence. A few seconds passed. Then, in a low, raspy voice, someone said, "I'm inside." I thought it was a prank. "Inside where?" I laughed lightly. "You mean inside the station?" The line went dead. I felt a slight chill, but strange calls happen all the time during late-night shows. I brushed it off and continued the program. Exactly 30 seconds later, I heard something in the hallway outside the studio. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, steady, like fingernails lightly knocking against glass. I stood up from my chair. The studio door is made of thick glass and stays locked from the inside during live sessions. At night, it's usually just me and one security guard in the entire building. I walked closer to the door and looked through it. No one was there, but right in the center of the glass, there was a foggy patch, like someone had just breathed onto it from the other side. A cold wave ran through me. I went back to my seat, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was temperature difference, maybe condensation. Then, inside my headphones, I heard something faint. A whisper. It wasn't coming from the phone line. It wasn't coming from the control board. It was coming from inside the studio. "Don't open the door." My heart started pounding hard against my chest because the studio door was locked and I was completely alone. At least, I thought I was. I froze. My hands were still resting on the control board, but I couldn't move. The whisper had been clear, too clear. "Don't open the door." Not open the door, not let me in. It said, "Don't." Slowly, I lifted the headphones off one ear. Silence. Just the low hum of studio equipment and the soft patter of rain against the window. I swallowed hard and spoke into the mic, trying to keep my voice steady for the listeners. "All right, looks like we've got some strange energy in the studio tonight." I forced a nervous chuckle. No one responded. Usually the phone lines light up during moments like that. People love when something unexplained happens live. But the call board was completely empty. No incoming calls, no blinking lights, nothing. I glanced at the studio clock again. 1:19 a.m. Only 2 minutes had passed since the private call. It felt like 20. Then, tap, tap, tap. This time louder, right against the glass door. Turned slowly, and that's when I saw it. A handprint pressed flat against the outside of the glass. Long fingers. Too long. The palm looked narrow, stretched, and it was sliding downward, leaving a faint streak behind it. Chest tightened. I rushed toward the door and flipped on the hallway lights from the switch beside it. Hallway flooded with pale fluorescent light. Empty, completely empty. The handprint was still there, on the outside, and as I stared at it, another one appeared, right beside the first, pressing from the other side.
I stumbled back. My shoulder hit the edge of the desk. This wasn't a prank. The security guard would have had to unlock the main hallway door to even reach this area, and that door makes a loud metallic click when opened. I hadn't heard anything. Suddenly, my computer monitor flickered. The live broadcast software glitched. For a half second, my microphone cut out, and in that brief silence, my own voice came through the speakers. But I wasn't speaking. It was a recording, a perfect imitation of me. Go ahead, open it. The tone was calm, inviting. Wrong. I stared at the mic in front of me. The red live light was still on. My throat went dry, because if that wasn't me, then what was broadcasting my voice, and who or what was standing right outside the glass? The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed the corridor. The handprints disappeared, and in the pitch-black reflection of the glass, I thought I saw someone standing directly behind me, inside the studio, breathing. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The studio was a sealed box, soundproof walls, one locked glass door, no windows that opened, and something was standing behind me. I could feel it, not touching me, just close, close enough that the air felt heavier. Slowly, very slowly, I looked up at the reflection in the dark glass door across the room. At first, all I saw was myself, pale face, wide eyes, frozen. Then, the emergency exit sign flickered faintly in the hallway, casting a brief red glow across the glass, and for a split second, there were two silhouettes in the reflection. Mine and another, taller, standing directly behind my chair. The red glow vanished. The hallway went black again. The second silhouette was gone. I spun around. Nothing. Empty studio. Chair, desk, microphone, control board. Just me, breathing too fast. This isn't real, I whispered to myself, but the microphone picked it up. My voice echoed through my headphones, and then another whisper layered over it. You shouldn't have answered. The broadcast meter spiked. The software screen showed audio input, but I wasn't speaking. I reached for the master fader and pulled it down. Silence, at least on air. But inside my headphones, I could still hear breathing. Slow, steady, not mine. My heart was pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. I grabbed my phone from the desk and called the security guard. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. That never happens. He always answers. I hung up and tried again. This time, the call didn't even connect. No service. That made no sense. I had full signal all night. The studio temperature suddenly dropped. I could see my breath, actually see it. Thin clouds forming in front of my face. And then, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The on-air sign above the studio door. It wasn't red anymore. It was flickering, and behind the flicker, for just a second, the letters rearranged. Not on air, but in here. The lights inside the studio dimmed. Not off, just lower, like something was draining the power. My computer screen went black. The equipment powered down. Total dead air, which should be impossible. We have backup generators, emergency systems. The station does not just go silent. But in that moment, everything died. Except the headphones. Inside them, the whisper returned, closer now, right against my ear. "You're still inside." And then I felt it, a hand, cold, resting gently on my shoulder.
The hand on my shoulder wasn't heavy. It wasn't pressing, but it burned. A cold fire that made my skin crawl, searing through layers of shirt and flesh straight into my bones. My body refused to move. My head snapped toward the sound, toward the presence behind me. But the studio was empty, or at least it appeared that way. I could feel its gaze, something ancient, something patient, something that had been waiting for me to cross this threshold. My heart pounded, not in fear, but in recognition. The presence wasn't human, not entirely. It was like a jinn, dark, whispering, trapped in this mortal coil, observing, learning, toying. The whispers started again, not through the headphones this time, through my skull. A low, guttural susurrus in a language older than anything I could comprehend. Arabic words, twisted, curling around my mind like smoke. Ma takun huna, ma tarfa al-nar. Do not remain here. Do not raise the fire. I backed away, my hands clutching the desk for stability, but the pressure followed. Every step I took, the presence mirrored, unseen, perfectly synchronized. The equipment flickered as if responding to its will. Monitors blinked with static. The on-air sign pulsed again, and again, the letters rearranged themselves. This time, they spelled, "Leave before dawn." I wanted to run. My legs were betraying me. Every part of me screamed to flee, yet the jinn had me anchored, rooted to the spot. I tried to shout, tried to call Charles or anyone, but my voice wouldn't come. Only whispers echoed from the headphones, from inside my head, repeating, "You belong to the fire now." Then I saw it. Movement in the darkened corner of the studio. A figure, shapeless but tall and impossibly thin. Its limbs seemed to stretch and bend at impossible angles. The air around it shimmered like heat haze, but icy. Its eyes glowed faintly in the shadow, 2 pinpricks of light piercing the darkness. It spoke again, this time clear in English, with a voice like grinding metal and hot ash. "Do not resist. You are already here." The door handle rattled. Someone, something was outside, testing it. And then from the air vents above, a whisper hissed, "Do not escape." I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy mic stand, and swung it at the darkness. The figure recoiled, but didn't vanish. Instead, it seemed to laugh, a sound like chains dragged over stones. I realized then I was not just being watched, I was being hunted. Not by a man, not by a thief or intruder, but by a jinn, a maleficent ghoul, tied to this old studio, bound to its steel and wires, awakened by my presence. The whispers intensified, coiling through my mind. My vision blurred, and shadows deepened until the studio was no longer familiar. Every corner seemed to stretch farther, every wall pressing in. I could feel the air thicken like molten smoke. And in that moment, I knew if I stayed 1 second longer, I would not leave. I didn't hesitate. I bolted. The door, the handle, locked, of course.
It had never been just a handprint. It had been a seal. The jinn, the ghoul. It had bound me inside. I slammed my shoulder against it. Nothing. Again, nothing. Then I remembered the fire alarm panel on the wall, the emergency override. I ripped it open, yanked the wires, and screamed a prayer under my breath, an ancient Arabic invocation I barely remembered. Bismillah, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. The lights flickered violently. The on-air sign exploded into red fury. The equipment powered back on, but the studio was wrong. Shadows moved against the walls, twisting, writhing. The jinn hovered in every reflection, in every screen, in the glass. Its eyes burned, following me, watching me, taunting me. I ripped the door open and ran into the hallway. The faint glow of dawn had begun to seep under the outer doors, and for a split second, the world felt normal again. But I knew better. I had seen the impossible, heard the impossible, felt the impossible. I ran down the stairs, tripping, almost falling. The whispers followed me, hissing in Arabic and English at the same time. Do not leave. Do not escape. Your blood is fire. The station lobby came into view, empty, silent, but the shadows stretched unnaturally long, and I could swear a dark shape was moving behind the security desk. I bolted to the front doors, and for the first time in hours, I saw the sun crest the horizon. Light, true light. I stepped outside. Cold air hit me, crisp and real. The whispers vanished. The shadows melted. For a moment, nothing existed but normalcy. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I ran until my legs gave out. When I finally reached my car, I noticed something on the driver's seat. My microphone, my broadcast notes, the same equipment I had brought inside, but smeared across the papers, written in a dark, almost liquid pattern, were the words, "We heard you. We heard you. The broadcast never ends." Even now, months later, I can't explain it. The studio wasn't haunted by ghosts, not by humans. It was something older, something that fed on sound, on voices, on fear, and it had found me. I never broadcast alone again. I never enter a sealed room without light, and I never, ever underestimate the jinn in the dead air.
The next part of this story will send shivers down your spine. Tell me, where are you listening from? How terrified are you? Comment below. If you're new, subscribe now. The Daniel Boone National Forest stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of shadowed trees and whispering creeks, over 700,000 acres where sunlight barely reached the forest floor. I drove in early Thursday morning, the kind of morning where the mist clings to the wheels and the air smells of wet pine. I needed to disappear, away from emails, deadlines, and the noise of life. My plan was simple. 3 nights alone, deep in the backcountry. My pack was heavy but familiar, the .308 bolt-action rifle snug against my shoulder. I had enough food, water, and survival gear to disappear entirely. The first day was perfect. 7 miles into the forest, I found a flat clearing near a creek, set up my tent, and made a small fire. Smoke spiraled into the gray sky, and for hours I existed only in the crackle of wood and the rush of water. But when I woke in the dead of night, it was no ordinary glow that caught my eye. 200 yards through the trees, an orange flicker pulsed, a fire. Not huge, just a faint campfire-sized glow, but steady, unnatural. My first thought was another camper, irresponsible, leaving embers smoldering. I unzipped my tent and scanned the woods. Silence. No voices, no movement beyond the flicker. I watched it for several minutes. The fire seemed almost sentient, swaying with purpose rather than the whim of the wind. Its flames cast shadows that writhed like dark tendrils, reaching into the underbrush. And then I realized there was no one tending it. The ground was untouched, not a trace of ash, not a ring of stones, nothing. The forest was pristine. A chill gripped me. I had seen the glow, yet the earth showed no evidence of fire ever touching it. My mind raced through every rational explanation and failed. The air smelled faintly of burning wood, but the fire, the embers, the warmth, none of it physically existed. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew I was being watched, not by a person, not by a wild animal, something else, something old, something that waited in the dark recesses of the forest, patient, observing, and hungry. A presence older than the trees themselves, perhaps a djinn of fire, called to life by some forgotten curse. I zipped my tent back up, heart hammering. Sleep was impossible. The forest outside was silent now, but I could feel it, pressing just beyond the veil of the ordinary. The next day, I couldn't shake the unease. The forest seemed heavier, older, like it had been holding its breath while I slept. The terrain shifted as I hiked deeper. The creek bed fell away, and the trees grew taller, their trunks twisted, their roots like gnarled fingers gripping the soil. A dense canopy blocked most of the sky, and the air was thick with the scent of moss and damp decay. I found another clearing around mid-afternoon and set up camp. Everything seemed normal until nightfall. I had just dozed off when a sound jolted me awake, a violent cracking, like a colossal branch snapping in half, followed by a deep, resonant thud that vibrated through the ground beneath me. My pulse spiked. It wasn't wind. It wasn't storm. The forest was still. Before I could process, it happened again, louder this time, closer, from a different direction. My heart sank. Two enormous trees falling in separate spots, in perfect silence, in the absence of any storm. That was impossible. Nothing in the forest could move that weight silently, with such precision. Then the low, guttural rumble began, a sound that was part growl, part human throat-clearing, unrelenting. It echoed through the forest like a language I couldn't understand. I gripped my rifle, chambering around quietly, and whispered a prayer under my breath. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. The rumble lasted a full minute, then gradually faded, as if retreating deeper into the shadows. The forest returned to its uncanny stillness, but sleep was gone. My mind was racing. Something had moved through the trees, something massive, something unnatural. I knew then that this wasn't just the forest. This was a hunting ground for something older, a djinn or ghoul, a creature that thrived in the isolation of the wilderness. And somehow, it had noticed me. At first light, I forced myself out of the tent, every muscle aching, heart still racing. The cracked, fallen trees from the night before loomed ahead, silent monuments of something I couldn't comprehend. I approached the nearest one cautiously. The trunk was massive,
splintered at odd angles. The fracture wasn't clean. It looked ripped, shredded, as if some immense force had gnawed through it with intent, not accident. The bark was stripped in long, jagged strips, the pale wood beneath gouged and chewed. Nothing I knew could have done this. Beavers? No. Woodpeckers? No. Wind? Impossible. This was deliberate, predatory work, a carnivorous destruction of living wood. Cold dread settled in my stomach. Whoever or whatever was here, it was clever. It observed, it manipulated. The thought of a jinn, a fire-dwelling ghoul, or a dark ifrit flitted through my mind, ancient beings of lore, drawn to the human heart's fear. I had never believed, not fully, but standing in this forest, I had no choice. Then my gaze caught something on the ground near the broken branches, a small cluster of my belongings, a blue bandana and a carabiner, both mine, lay untouched by debris, yet unmistakably absent from my pack. Panic surged. Something had been watching me, moving through these woods silently, touching my things, following me. I didn't pause. I shoved my gear into my backpack and ran, branches slashing at my arms, roots clawing at my boots. I felt eyes everywhere, yet saw nothing. The forest had transformed into a hunting ground. Each step felt like walking deeper into the maw of some unseen predator. The shadows themselves seemed to twitch, alive with intent. The whisper of leaves in the canopy above was not the wind. It was a chorus, murmuring, warning. Every instinct screamed, "Leave, now, or be claimed." The hike back became a nightmare of vigilance. Every snapping twig, every rustle in the underbrush made me freeze mid-step. My rifle never left my hands, and my eyes constantly scanned the darkness between the tree trunks. I could feel it. Whatever had moved those trees, whatever had taken my bandana and carabiner, it was tracking me. Patient, calculating. Hours passed, yet the forest offered no reprieve. Light filtered weakly through the thick canopy, shadows stretching like black rivers across the forest floor. I stumbled over roots and rocks, every step a reminder of my vulnerability. The wind was still absent. The forest was unnervingly silent, except for the occasional snap of branches, too deliberate to be random. Then I noticed them. Strange gouges in the base of another tree, deep, jagged, and irregular, similar to the fallen giants. The pattern was unmistakable. It had been moving in my direction, leaving a trail of terror, marking the forest with its presence. The idea of human stalkers crossed my mind. No human could have moved like this, silently, leaving such precise destruction and vanish without a trace. This was something older, something that the forest itself obeyed. I forced myself forward, every instinct screaming to flee. My limbs burned from the weight of my pack, my muscles screaming in protest, but stopping was not an option. The darkness thickened, swallowing the path behind me. The air grew heavier, and the scent, acrid, earthy, almost sulphurous, hit my nostrils. The ifrit I had whispered about in my prayers suddenly felt close, pressing in, testing my resolve. And then I heard it, the subtle, wet crunch of movement behind me. Something large, something deliberate, pacing me, closing the distance with terrifying patience. My pulse skyrocketed. I knew the forest could hide it, but it could not hide its intent. My mind reeled with the knowledge that I was not just being followed, I was being hunted. I ran without looking back, branches whipping my face, roots clawing at my boots,
the weight of my pack threatening to drag me down. The forest had transformed into a labyrinth of terror, each shadow a possible talon, each whisper of leaves a threat. My mind clung to one thought: survive. Whatever had been stalking me wasn't human. The sheer violence on the fallen trees, the way it had handled my belongings, it was a predator that thrived in darkness, a ghoul of the forest or a djinn of the shadows. Hours blurred together. My body screamed for rest, yet stopping meant death. I stumbled into clearings, crossed streams, and forced myself forward, the unnatural silence pressing in from all sides. Every sense screamed that it was still there, watching, waiting. Then, as if the forest itself allowed me a small mercy, I glimpsed my car at a distance, parked under the thinning canopy where the trail ended. I reached it, drenched, bruised, trembling. The forest behind me seemed to retreat, yet I could still feel its eyes, its awareness, lingering in the shadows. I drove away without looking back, tires throwing mud into the fading darkness. Once at a safe distance, I called the authorities, but there was nothing they could do. The tracks were gone, the forest undisturbed. Even now, years later, the memory of that night refuses to fade. I still go camping, still walk among trees, but the shadow of that unseen predator, that djinn in the forest, follows me. I know it waits in the darkness, patient, eternal, reminding me that some forces in this world are not meant to be confronted, only survived. The forest had claimed my fear, and perhaps it never really let it go.
And so tonight's story comes to an end. But the deeper the silence, the louder the fear. Follow us for more nightmare-fueling stories. Only the brave survive.